I am dying to roll to our next guest speaker. Always love having him on the call. Last month, over $35,000 in submitted premium. He is number one year to date. He's number one all time with Epis in production with over $2 million in submitted premium put on the board. You've heard him on many, many calls before. Always love having him, Mr. Dan Riddle. Dan's going to talk about establishing the confidence with the buyer. Dan, are you there?
I sure am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Thanks for jumping on the call today, Dan.
Thanks for having me once again. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say, before I get into my presentation here, is two things that I want everybody to know is that I don't close everybody I see, and I don't get different leads than everybody else is getting. I'll just tell you that I just commit to getting enough of them every week, and that's normally about 25 to 30 or more. Okay? Now, and I'm going to talk a little bit about establishing buyer's confidence. And I'm going to go over real quickly 15 get-real questions about how you establish buyer's confidence. If your prospect is saying no, it's most likely that you failed somewhere to establish the buyer confidence that you need. Okay, now what comes to mind is you have to really think about this. Did you lose the sale or did you just fail to make it? Were you sure that the prospect should have bought? And a lot of times as you head back to your car, sometimes we feel real bad, and then we need to try to justify and figure out why the prospect turned us down. So I'm going to kind of like go through some of those things real quickly. Now, once you answer the fundamental questions of self-doubt, like was you friendly enough, was you enthusiastic enough, were you professional looking, then sometimes you might have to be, dig a little bit deeper for the true answer to those questions there. We all know we have to be professional looking and friendly and enthusiastic, and sometimes the truth hurts. The realization of what you failed to do is a big step in making sure that you are successful the next time. And I'm going to save you some anguish. You failed to establish buyer confidence. Now, you may say, well, you're wrong. They really like me. Well, they probably did. But likability is only a part of the sales equation, So I'm going to give you 15 different things. First thing, was I on time? Did I show up 5 minutes early? Good. Or 5 minutes late? Bad. Well, sometimes we can't always be on time. And sometimes it's about being honest about things when you show up. If you show up late or whatever, if you just be honest with people why you showed up late. A lot of times we have to spend time helping other people. And the good thing is that, I let people know that, look, I'm not going to jump ship on you neither. I'll take the necessary time to make sure you're taken care of. Were you prepared? Did you walk into if you had an appointment with everything that you need to make the sale? Did you make it there? Even if you didn't have no appointment, did you have everything you needed to make the sale? Did you have to go back to the car? Or did you have to say, well, I'm going to have to come back later because I forgot the replacement form. I'm going to have to come back later because I forgot the bank draft form. So you have to make sure that you're prepared. Were you organized? Did you have everything at your fingertips? Or were you fumbling around? See, that's another good important thing is making sure, because people are paying attention to what you're doing. And if you're fumbling around and looking like you're not organized, then that distracts people. So we want to make sure we're organized. Could you answer all the questions about your product? Did you really have command over the carriage that we have? Were you having to get back, telling people that you have to get back to them on something? See, all of that has a lot to do with your buyer's confidence. And so next thing, did you make excuses or did you blame others about anything? And, excuses like, the leads are bad, the prospect is bad, it was a wasted trip, I drove way out here for nothing. Well, those are excuses. And it's nobody's fault but yours, and you have to just sit back and say, well, what can I do better the next time to make sure that I don't waste time, that I don't make sure I don't waste a trip out, especially if you have to go out to a long place. You want to make sure that, first of all, you have some kind of idea of the person going to be there, number one. Next, You want to have some kind of idea of what they really need before you make a long trip. Otherwise, you're going to be getting upset, and we're going to be looking to blame somebody for it. Were you apologizing a lot because you quoted the wrong price, or you didn't know the answer to something? Did you undersell the client? That's number 6, by the way. Did the prospect probe personal issues about your company? Like, for example, sometimes people say, well, what company you with? And sometimes they say that in a negative way. So you have to know how to come across, with somebody, because that has a lot to do with their confidence if they come out with that about, what company you with, because they're not really focused on why you're really there. So that's really important. Did the prospect ask any kind of doubt questions about what kind of product you got? They can say, I don't need that, or I have a pre-need, or, so those are things you have to answer. You're going to have to restore confidence back to them when they start saying, I don't need that, or, I already have this, or I already have that. See, you have to always hold on to your belief that in the very first place, if they had all of that and they satisfied with what they have, they never would have took the time to fill that lead out and send it in. So that's just something that they're just throwing up because they don't have confidence in you. Did the prospect ask any kind of down questions about you? Did they ask you, well, how long you been with the company, or how much experience do you have? Now, the answer to that should be addressed in the very beginning. When you first sitting down with the client, you need to let them know about yourself, how long you've been around, a little bit about what you do, how you help people, in that area that they live in. That way that question won't come up. But if you don't address that at the very beginning, that could come up because that's something that they want to know. And if you don't tell them in the very beginning, they may ask you that in the end. So they have doubts about you. Did you drop name or on other happy, loyal customers effectively? And that's a good thing. We all have a lot of stories. And the one thing I like about going out every day is creating stories. Zig Ziglar is a very good example of, how you can take stories, and you can use those stories. And we all got stories. Every time you close a piece of business, that's a story for you to tell somebody else. And sometimes you can use that story from an individual you just left with the person you sitting down right then and there to move it forward. So we all got stories we can tell. Do you feel as though you're on the defensive all the time? Well, you're not in control. If you feel like I got to defend myself and this person is just running, the person's just running over you. That's basically what's going on. So you've got to get back control of the situation. And how do you get back control of the situation? You've got to, always, once you know what the need is, you go back to what the need was. I tell people all the time, I understand how you feel about that, Mr. Jones, but, you told me that, the reason that you filled this car down the middle of the end was because, you were in a situation, you didn't want that financial burden to fall on your family. And so, and that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. So now you can kind of get things back in perspective again. We don't never want to be on the defensive. We always want to be on the offense. And you have to have total control. Even if they don't move forward and buy anything, you still got to have control of it. And you can still be confident, knowing you've done the best you could. But you're not confident if somebody runs over you and then kick you out the house and then, and you never did get to say what you needed to say. Could I overcome all objections in a confident manner? Did I find myself unable to respond confidently about price, quality, and other issues blocking them from moving forward when they ask you? Did you try to fake it? See, we don't want to have to fake it. We hear that saying when we first come into business, fake it till you make it. Well, that only goes so far, in this kind of business right here. You have to know what you're doing, and there's only a certain amount of faking you can do with this. And it doesn't require rocket science to do what we're doing because the need is already there before we even get there. The need has already been established. We just got to reaffirm, what the need is and get them to admit what the need is, as to why they requested the information. Did I down the competition? Well, sometimes people, they'll tell you they have this, they got, a Golden Gate, they got another insurance carrier, whatever. And we have to be real careful about that. We don't want to down anybody. And so basically what I tell people is that there are a lot of the companies out there. My job is to make sure that whatever you do have is adequate, is enough, it's going to cover your needs now and down the road. And make sure that you're not on no waiting periods you shouldn't have to be on. Make sure that you're in the right risk classification that you should be in, because that determines if you're going to have a waiting period. It determines what the premium is going to be. Make sure you're not paying too much for your coverage. Make sure that, if your policy is going to end or terminate on you and your rates are going to go up, you're going to know when that's going to happen. So you'll have a plan B in place. So, and nothing else, I tell them this, my job is, that's good that you have coverage because you realize how important it is to have coverage. There's so many people I see every day don't have anything at all, or they don't have enough, or they don't have the right kind of program. They didn't know their program was going to change. They didn't know when they turned 80 they weren't going to have no coverage no more. They didn't know every 5 years their rates was going to go up. So my job is to look out for you and make sure you understand what you really do have with what you currently have right now. And I cannot put you in a worse position than you already is in. And if you have a good program, my job is to tell you straight up that you have a very good program. But on the other hand, if there are some things that I think you need to be aware of about what you currently have, my job is to expose that to you too. Because, we're seniors and, you can't afford to have your policy changing at a time that you and your family is going to need it. So that's great that you got what you have. And then you start talking about what they have. Well, what do you have? Well, do you have it? Let's just take a look at that. And so that's how you overcome that in a positive way. Was the prospect uninvolved in the sales presentation? Did the prospect just sit there, or worse, were they doing other things while you were talking? See, now that's a big no-no. You can't have nobody's attention if they're not focusing on what you're doing and what you're saying. We don't chase rabbits. We don't do, if the husband is there and he in another room and you're out there with the wife, you got to stop that. You got to say, well, I can't sit down. I can't go through this without your husband being here or your wife being here. I just can't do that. So when is a good time that maybe we can come back later? I can come back later in the afternoon when he or she is feeling better, or in respect to my time, maybe I can see you, later this afternoon or first thing in the morning. Because I can't do this without the other person being there. If the dog is barking, you have to tell them, look, you got a nice dog there, but I can't really present this because, the dog is barking. So if you don't mind, just for a few minutes here, could you put the dog up, put him in the backyard, wherever, because I can't get through the presentation. The TV is cut up too loud. You got to tell them, radio is cut up too loud. Mr. Jones, and I tell people this, they be watching, whenever they watch it, I compliment on what they watching. A lot of times they like watching Westerns. And I say, that Bonanza, I say, I grew up watching that. And as long as you got that going on, we ain't going to get nothing done because I would be looking at that myself. But if you don't mind, just for a few minutes, could you kind of just cut it down a little bit? That way I can kind of get through the presentation here. So you've got to nip those things in the butt and not be afraid to tell people to cut the TV down or put the dog out. Or, the wife's, well, my wife's sleeping. Well, Mr. Jones, I understand that, but, just for a few minutes. Now, she may be mad at me, but could you just go wake her up and just tell her that this is very, very important? And I promise I won't take long, but I can't do this without her. See, there's a way you can go about doing things. You don't have to feel afraid to ask him to wake his wife up, because if you told him you had $10,000 for his wife, he'll hurry up and go wake her up, or vice versa. I'm not saying it's always got to be the woman. It could be the man sleeping, whatever. But anyway, you have to take control and all from the very beginning to the time that you leave. Either way. And lastly, was I too anxious to make the sale? Was I too pushy? Okay, now, and that's something that we don't have to push people to do anything. We don't have to beg people to do anything. We don't have to convince people to do things. Because if we have to beg and convince, then you're going to have to continue to do that. If I got to convince somebody to buy some life insurance, even if I'm successful, now I got to convince them to keep it. So we don't want to do that. It all goes back to need. Once you establish the need of what it is, why they need it, or why they don't need it, then most likely most people is going to keep it when they get it. So our focus is not only just to write the piece of business, but our focus is to make sure that it stays on the books as well. And if there's any doubt that a person, if they're saying, well, I'm just going to think about that, but I can change my mind, right? Well, you need to address that. And, and normally what I would do, I would just tell them, Mr. Jones, now you say you don't have anything now, but if you are unsure about, if I could get this for you, that you're not going to keep it, then we don't need to do anything at all because you're not sure, So you have to let people know that way rather than, because if somebody say, well, I kind of want to look at it, and then if I don't like it, if I don't want it, then I just cancel it. Well, you don't want nobody to cancel it, so you don't want to agree to that, so you just, I just let people know, hey, well, if you plan on canceling that, Mr. Jones, no sense in us doing anything because it's just a whole bunch of waste of time. Now, then I bring them back to the need part of why they filled the card out. Now, you say it now that you don't have anything. Why would you want to cancel something that you say you really need, and you told me that it was a burden on your family, that you just went through a situation where there was a loss and the burden fell on your family. Now, why would you want to cancel that? So if you're going to do that, then we don't need to do anything until you're ready, because right now you're not ready. So, here's my number, you got my card, call me when you're ready, and leave it at that. And so then people, that'll get them in a different state of mind because you're not really begging them, you're not convincing them. Now, these are 15 different things that we could that should help you out on establishing buyer's confidence because they all important. People have to feel confident in you and what you got. They got to trust you. They got to want to do business with you, and then they refer you to somebody else. That's another thing. If you do this the right way, you're going to get more referrals too. Because if they can have confidence in you, guess what? They can make a phone call, which, by the way, that happened to me in the month of March. I had quite a bit of people that was giving me some referrals, and they were calling people right then and there. They say, hold up, I got a brother live across town. You think, you may go over there and help him? And I said, well, sure. I said, well, just give him a call because I'm going to be on this area here most of the day. Matter of fact, I can go see him probably within the next hour and a half. And, they called him up right then and there. And I spoke to them. A lot of times I speak to people. I don't let people do talking for me because I know what to say to people when I get them on the phone. And I told them, I say, now, I understand that you got, cirrhosis and you've been turned down before. The good thing is that, your sister sent this card in and I was able to get her a program, and I probably can help you. Even though you have cirrhosis, I believe that I can get you a pretty good program. And I can come and see you in about an hour or so. Is that okay? And which he agreed. And I went over there, and guess what? $95. That was $95 policy. Just offer referral. So things like that happen to us if you do this the right way and you establish the confidence, with people. They don't have no problem referring you to somebody else. Now, with all that in mind, I think I'm going to end this, but I hope that I gave you guys enough, and I kind of went through this kind of quick, so you probably want to go back and listen to this again, maybe write some notes down. But these are things that will open up a whole new door for you in the area of establishing buyer's confidence. And thank you very much, and I hope everybody have a prosperous, blessed week this week.